meeting for March 3rd, 2023. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Since I was the past chair, but we're going to elect a new chair, and I'm going to nominate Councilman Spencer Duncan. Are there any more nominees?
Oh, Jesus.
You know, it's great to scold people, but it's great not to be scolded. Yes, my mic was off. So let's start over. Welcome to the Transit Guest Tax for March 3rd. I'll call the meeting since I was the past chair, and we'll move right into business, election of the 2023 committee chair. I would like to nominate Councilman Spencer Duncan. Are there any more nominees from the floor? Any more nominees from the floor? If not, by a show of hands, in favor, raise your right hand.
All right, sure, I'll vote for myself, why not?
Okay, 3-0. I will hand the mic over to Spencer.
All right, let's take a 30-minute break. No, all right. Well, thank you, appreciate it. I'll do my best to get it done this year and see what we can get accomplished. I don't expect today's meeting to be too long. It's one of those meetings where we're going to do a quick overview of a couple things, have a discussion about where we might be headed, and then have a meeting probably towards the middle or end of next month, and that'll be the second part of today's beginning of the conversation as staff gets some information for us and some of our questions can get answered. So with that, I believe we have an introduction of our somewhat new. He's still new. I don't know how long someone's new with our chief financial. It hasn't even been a month yet. Maybe. Okay.
Barely.
Then you're still pretty new. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chair, Council members. It's a great honor for me to be here in front of you as the City of Topeka Chief Financial Officer. I look forward for a robust conversation on the transient guest tax and our Q4 2022 report, as well as recommendations for the governing body into the distribution of the Evel Knievel remaining funds. But once again, thank you for the opportunity that you're giving me to serve you and the people that you represent. That makes our wonderful city. Thanks.
Thank you very much. With that, we can go right into a review of our quarterly reports, which I'm assuming is you, Freddie.
That's right. All right, slide. So for those watching at home, or for those who would like to know a little bit more about the TGT, the Transient Guest Tax, this is a tax levy on the gross rental sales in lodging or sleeping accommodations such as hotels. Currently, the TGT rate in the city of Topeka is set at 7%. This helps fund three different strategies. So one, it's 5% goes to the TGT base, 1% goes to the Sunflower Soccer, and 1% goes to special projects. For the rest of the report, we're going to be going a little deep dive into that 1% special projects. So a little bit of historical understanding. In 2015, a recommendation from this body was made. And then a resolution was adopted by the entire governing body to distribute that 1% for 12 years for 4 unique projects in an amount not to exceed $4,770,000 in total. The 4 projects were selected. There were Constitutional Hall with a total funding of $355,000. Evergy Plaza with a total funding of $3,435,000. Jayhawk Theater with $680,000, and Evel Knievel Museum with a $300,000 in total funding. So now let's go into a little deep dive into these projects. So we're gonna start with Constitutional Hall. Slide. So in Q4 2022, the city of Topeka distributed $7,828 to this organization. Out of a total budget of $355,000, 52% of all of those funds has been distributed, totaling $185,847. This leaves $169,000 left. A little report on the organization, the Q4 report, the organization mentioned that architectural designs will proceed with the construction drawing for the elevators and the other essential public access features. Slide. So next now we have the Evergy Plaza. $75,744 were distributed this past quarter. Out of the total budget of $3,435,000, 50% of those funds has been already distributed. The Evergy Plaza continues internal and external events regardless of the weather. For example, the plaza operated an ice rink between November 2022 and January 2023. Their staff also is reporting seeing more licenses from places outside the county. This is different counties within the state as well as other states. Slide. Finally, we have the Jayhawk Theater. So let me pull up my notes for that one. So Jayhawk Theater, almost $15,000 were distributed this past quarter. So once again, out of the total budget of $680,000, $355,000 or 52% were already distributed to the organization. They've been using these funds to develop, restore portions of the theater's foundations, as well as alleys along the auditorium wall. The funding is also supporting architectural and engineering design fees, as well as portion of the construction. Finally, we have the Evel Knievel Museum funding, but that's a portion that I'm leaving it to the next agenda item to discuss the remaining funding for this organization. So at this point, do you any questions? Please.
Should turn out. Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, Freddie, that I understand this correctly. 300,000 was allotted to Evel Knievel.
Yes, ma'am.
The amount distributed to them was 113,257,000.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
so is that what they spent? That was what we gave them out of the 300, right? Okay. And because that doesn't, so then available and undistributed is the 43,000. So I'm kind of, that's not adding up to, and then the 142 remaining. I'm kind of, am I off somewhere? Well, I know I'm off, but.
Hi, Councilwoman. Adam Vaughn, budget manager for the city. So the 43,000 that is available, money undistributed. So that's money that from our total 1% collection for these special projects, we've collected over the last 3 quarters since we stopped that giving the money to Evel Knievel. So that $43,000 is money that is currently available to be distributed. And then the amount remaining is how much is remaining to the total budget that was first approved.
Okay, because we only distributed the 113, that's what you're saying?
Correct. So
Okay.
there's 43,000 right now that can
Okay.
be sent.
I guess when you're saying available and undistributed, I'm thinking, well, it was available to them, but then they didn't use it, so is that how we?
They,
We still have those funds, ma'am, yes.
Okay,
yeah, I can answer that. So last year, when the news story broke that they may be leaving Topeka, at that time, former Councilmember Lesser and I went and had a conversation with Evel Knievel ownership and said, we understand the situation you're in, not all your fault, but do we have to still keep paying you this money till it's resolved? And they said no. So at that point, we stopped. We were basically holding them money. So they didn't have the opportunity to spend it because we just stopped writing them the check, basically.
So would I be safe to say the 43,000 and the 142,000, those, I would add those two monies together for the total remaining that would be available that we need to distribute?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the total amount would take those, that's the monies we're gonna have to reissue wherever.
So the $43,000, it's funds that we have, and that will be our next agenda item is to discuss those funds to be distributed to, or make the recommendation to the governing body to how to, or where to distribute those funds. The 142 are estimations on pretty
Okay.
much, yeah, the rest of the $300,000 that we have a contract. So that's just estimation for future transit guest tax receipts collection.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense to me, because I was like, is it the 43,000 that we're gonna?
Well, the
Or is it the
43,000, yeah.
142, or?
Yep. But
Okay.
the 43, yeah, it needs to be reallocated to either organization. That's pretty much up to you,
Yes, Councilmember Hofer.
please.
How many years left do we have on the 12 years?
Mike?
You have any?
How many years do we have left out of the original 12 years?
It goes through 2027.
Okay.
So 5 if you count this year.
Yep.
Okay, and are we required to distribute it to the others, or can we designate somebody else?
I believe you can designate it to how you would like to distribute that $43,000 to organization, to a project. I mean, legal can tell me otherwise, but I believe that is a portion of your recommendation to the governing body.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so I have 2 comments on this Q4 report, and
Please.
then we'll get a little deeper into Evel Knievel. And I sort of raised this with staff earlier, so they're not caught off guard, and there's nothing we have to debate or discuss today about it, but I want 2 things for our next meeting. So, and I did some quick math here. So our contracts do not require us, the way the contracts are structured is, our goal is to pay you this total amount over 12 years, but if tax collections are down 1 year, sorry, that's not our fault. You don't get your full allotment for that year. Does that make sense? So if you were the Constitution Hall and you were supposed to get $29,583,000 last year, it technically fell just short by a couple $100 because we didn't have it. I would like staff to go back and give us so we can know what the number would be today to what I'm going to call, quote unquote, make them whole up to this date, and if that's feasible at this time. May not be, I don't know, because I don't know what the numbers look like. Could be $20,000, it could be $500,000. I honestly don't know. I have an idea, I've done some math, but I'm not sure. So I'd like to see what that is, because I know there's been some conversations, other council members and even staff, of if that's doable, because we went through COVID and that was part of the purpose, maybe we can make that happen. So for next time, I'd like to see what those numbers are so we can discuss if that's even a reasonable discussion to have. The second thing I would like to see, and I will try to explain this as best I can, but every time I try to do it, it doesn't come out right. So here we go. I would like to go back to these 3 groups at some point. I don't want to catch them off guard. We're not doing anything today. The way these contracts were written, and this was 2.5 city managers ago, if you count the interim, who nobody here's fault, if you will. They were written as such.
The half?
Yeah, no, the interim, I don't know. Are they a full? I'm not sure. An interim tag. Prior to these contracts, the way the contracts were written was, so over 12 years, we guaranteed you, I'm going to make up numbers that are easy, $200,000. We get whatever that is per year, you get your money, and then that was it. But you at least knew over the course of time you were getting that amount of money. These contracts were written as such that if we ever do get into a situation where we have quote unquote excess in a year, we remit that pool of money and split it evenly again back to these groups. And so in theory, we could meet our obligation to them in 10 years instead of 12 years, okay? I would like us to, at least these groups, to consider and us to have a conversation about changing those contracts back to the old form, so that if we start to have, if we can make them whole, and if we have overflow as it comes up, knock on whatever, that frees up that money for us as a city council to be able to say, okay, it was a good year, we have $30,000 extra dollars, there's some other groups that could use those funds, which is sort of how it used to be done. So I'd like staff to also take a look at those contracts and then bring us back what that language would look like and if that's even feasible and doable. And now that the three groups know I've put it out in the world, they can either say, yeah, we could make that work, or heck no, Duncan, over the next couple of weeks or whatever. So I want to put that out there for something for us to consider, because I think that it doesn't hurt the groups, and I think it gives us some flexibility over the next 5 years if things go well. So that's my homework to staff for our next meeting, and I just wanted to put it out there as it relates to these projects. All right, so any other questions on those projects before we go on to Evel Knievel? No? All right, so I want to say a couple things about Evel Knievel, and then we'll talk about this process. Obviously, last year, the news broke that they may be moving. If you talk to them to date, I don't think they have a timeline or even know what may or may not be happening. And if they do, they get to make that public when they so choose. I do want to say I had multiple conversations with them. They are in a tough position. This is not all their call. They are at the mercy of the Knievel family. So I understand the position they were put in. They have met every obligation this city asked them to at the front end, which is why the first $100,000 they put in that museum. It's there. People have gone to it. It's benefited the city of Topeka. But we did go to them and say, okay, but if you may not be here for the length of your entire 12 years, there's some money on the table that we would certainly like to put back out into circulation. And they very graciously said, we understand that. You can, as of this date, this was early last year, said you can stop making your current payments, which counts for that $43,000. And then they did release the obligation of the contract to us for the remaining, which at this point is roughly $142,000 for the next 5 years based on the projections and similar contracts to what would be for the other organizations. What we are then going to be tasked with is how we want to distribute these funds. What is our process going to be as a recommendation to the council for how and who we want to give this money to? I don't know that I have a grand idea for that. I don't know if we want to talk about it again. We're not saying we need to do this today. I think we needed to have this conversation about what was available and an initial conversation about a process before we meet again next month to lay out what that process would look like. I think the public needed to know how much we were talking about so they can have some input into this process over the next 30 days before we meet again. But that's our job. We've got the money here, and we need to figure out how we want to distribute it. I'm open to any process we want to throw out there or considerations we want to think about. I will say I would prefer whatever process we do, it goes more towards not infrastructure in terms of roads, but more developmental stuff as opposed to operational dollars. Whatever that organization or groups that we may give it to, that would be my preference. But I'm open to, there's the discussion. How do we want to give away this $186,000? Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you. I have not been on this committee in years, and I know the process has changed. So the last time that, I'm going to do my homework and go back. The last time that we chose these, was there any other applications that didn't get awarded?
There were. We'd have to go back and get a report, but I think it was 20 or something. 14. 14, okay.
14?
So 10 didn't get approved. So the funding requests were about $15 million. And the committee review for all these fundings for projects were under $5 million. So more than $10 million was requested, but it couldn't be funded because the 4 projects in total were under $4.8 million.
And I realize, sitting on this committee several times, that always happens. We just never, ever have enough money. But I still want to go back, Freddie, I don't know if I can work with you or Adam, and see and get a running total of who they were and why they didn't make the cut, and I'll look at the videos as well. But I would like to see us maybe go back to that list to see,
Any of them are still around or interested or have a purpose for it?
I think that, and I was very excited about the Evel Knievel Museum, when we did a lot of that, when that came before the council. I think Constitutional Hall is doing a great job. I think Evergy Plaza is doing a great job, Jayhawk Theater. We're seeing dynamics. I mean, people couldn't stop talking about the ice ring down at Evergy Plaza. Only thing I heard was, how come it can't stay longer? And, I was like, well, it can't stay forever, but, from the kids and parents pushing their kids around to, and I know Jayhawk they're just bringing in more things, and they're doing that. But I just like to make sure that we all that everybody gets a piece of the pot, however we can do that.
Yep.
And I know we're probably not talking about a lot of money, but
I think it's $186,743. It's 43 of which they could have now versus the other is similar to the other contracts.
but that's
And it
just-
could be multiple groups.
That's just me. And if we're only going to divvy out the 43, is that are we doing the whole one?
No, we'll do the whole, I'm talking about the whole 186.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Whether that's, like I said, could be several groups over that time, but it'd be for the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be like a 12, we're not extending that 12 years for that. It'd be,
Right.
because that original amount was a set amount over 12 years approved by the governing body.
And if we're not able to fund anybody, then I think maybe then we split it between the remaining 3. That would be my suggestion. But I can't imagine why we couldn't split it between somebody else. I mean, bring in another person.
I had a lot of fun doing this recently through the ARPA process, so this will be.
Oh, God. Mic check. Mic off.
No, I mean, I think did you have any thoughts, Councilmember? I mean, I think that's a good approach. It'd be nice to get that list. I think we could look at that, and then we can sit here next month and say, okay, there might be some viable on this list. If we want to talk about opening up to some other process, we can do that. It's both a lot of money and not all at the same time. I mean, that's the irony of it. Right, yeah.
So just to bring a little bit of information to the table, in 2015, this committee made that selection through a very lengthy process where they were asking these organizations to apply for this grant. And as was mentioned before, 14 organizations applied for it, and the majority were not selected. And I believe some of the criteria that these TGT funding review board had were quantifying return on investment, increasing TGT dollars, define the plan and the project and the urgency, availability of funds from other sources, because some of these projects were so big that some of these monies will not be able to accomplish all of that, and the diversification of the projects. And at some point, the committee made that recommendation to select those 4 organizations. So, well, we do have the list for the previous applicants. Just because this was in 2015, I don't know if the needs have modified, has shifted to a different projects. But I can definitely share with you all of those organizations and potentially why they were not selected. But at the end, it was that committee who made that determination for giving those criteria that I just mentioned.
And I think just having that list would just give us a reference point, because you're right, there's some of the projects may no longer be, but if there's 1 or 2 that
Right.
we still hear about, and then we're like, yes, you've come to us several times before, maybe this is your opportunity to, I think it's fair to start with the folks who didn't get a crack at it, and then if not, we can whittle it from there and devise a different process. As the council member said, either open a new process or redistribute to the current existing. Yes, Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you. And I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, but I want to make sure that I understand what they did and why they did it and why they weren't chosen. that's what I want to do.
There's
Before
def-
Spencer starts setting up a whole bunch of meetings, I'd have to call him out. I mean, this is an easy process, we can go along with it, so.
Well, there's definitely a lot of need up there, so that wouldn't
Okay.
be hard to find
Right,
an organization or two.
right. And I don't need everybody calling me, telling me they need this money, so we're gonna move right along, right?
Well, no, I agree, because I do think it's always very important in this committee to keep that eye on the fact that these dollars are to go towards projects that
Yep.
bring people to Topeka.
Right.
They are transient guest tax dollars meant to ensure that they continue to circulate those dollars and increase them over time, which is also why, as I mentioned earlier, it's important too to look at things that we're going to spend it on long-term impacts on that, as versus, well, here's 5 years that may help you pay a salary, but that's not what we're trying to do. That's not the goal of these. So yeah, I think that'll help us too, as she said, give us a reference point to how their decisions were made in 15, since it's still some of those dollars and not new money. Someday we may have new money, but today we got what we got. Old money's good, I know. Cash is just the same. Anything else? So does that make sense that we've given you a task to do on those multiple fronts?
Yes, Chair. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Were there any other questions on Evel Knievel dollars? Or I guess we'll stop calling it that, so they probably don't appreciate that.
Do we not know when they're gonna be?
They don't, and I'm not sure they understand. I mean, I think there's new construction now going on down in Vegas that could impact it, and part of it is up to the Knievel family, who also just had a death in the family, and I think that may impact some of that decision. So I think there's a lot of moving parts, and it really is a lot of it out of the local folks' control.
Okay.
They kind of, it's the Knievel family's stuff and name and memory, and they get to control where that goes. So I think they're just kind of waiting for their orders also. Yep. All right. We didn't have any other major items. I'm going to ask the audience something here in a minute, but did you guys have anything else you wanted to bring up? I do see we have a couple out there. If you guys want to say anything regarding you don't have to, but if you want to say, hey, look at our project. Here's a quick update. Something I want you to know. Here's your chance. You're here. Yeah, go for it. Just walk on up.
I'm David Beck with Constitution Hall, and Friends of the Free State Capitol is the organization that had been renovating that for 20-some years now, and we greatly appreciate the transit guest tax monies that we've been able to do. Probably everybody knows that last year we were the recipient of base grant money from the state, which our budget was for a $5 million project, and it greatly enhanced the project itself. We're still doing all of the accessibility things that we had talked about earlier, but it's going to be at a much larger scale and allow us to add on a visitor center. One of our problems is that since we got the budget for the $5 million project, it's going to cost us more than that. So we're still in the money raising mode. But one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention is that the base grant money that we have, we're required to spend it all by September of 2024, which is a real challenge for us since we were not a shovel-ready project by any means. So we spent a long time in the design and everything. But so the point is that we're using that to match the funds for the base grant, and having to spend it that fast, it would benefit us if there was some way to accelerate the money that we got, either through the way making us whole from the money that we missed out on during COVID or some other way of distributing. It would benefit our project and help us to meet that deadline of having everything in place by before the end of 2024.
That base money has to be spent or obligated.
That's a question.
Yeah,
I don't know
You mean
either.
the state is not clear on something?
Yeah, I'm hoping it's obligated because there's almost no way we're going to get it built by September 24th. Or if they're going to allow substantial completion, or I'm hoping that obligated funds, we'll have no problem obligating the funds by that point. And, but, with construction the way it is, and we're about ready to go out for bids on it. But then that process is going to take some time, and, construction is always iffy as far as the timelines.
So on that note, I guess more homework, and I can kind of see it here. Next month, will you come back to us with a report on what the difference is between what Constitution Hall has received? And again, I can kind of see it here, but it may have changed in the first quarter. What they've received and what's left on that
Sure.
amount owed, so we can see if there's any way to fix their problem quicker. Does that make sense? To make sure they don't miss out on more money. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yes, sir, Kurt.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to stand up here and just kind of visit with you for a minute. I think I want to piggyback on something Councilman Duncan said regarding the process that was used when this money was originally allocated 7 years ago. And I'm speaking from a lodging perspective, since that's what generates this to start with. Return on investment has got to be a crucial factor in however this money is allocated. We have preached for years that it's imperative that we don't fritter this money away without considering return on investment, because if you do, it just depletes over time to where you don't really have as much as you started with. So that return on investment needs to be a key component of any discussion going forward. So, and I think even as you get into some of the considerations about where the Evel Knievel money, and I'm like you, I want to quit calling it Evel Knievel money at some point in time, but there are a lot of things that I see from the perspective of all four of the entities that got money in that original allocation. There are still things that could be done to put that money to good use from an infrastructure standpoint. Sylvia was talking, and I'm sorry, Councilwoman Ortiz, I've just known you too long, Sylvia, was talking about the ice rink. I mean, we rented that ice rink this year. And we've had discussions about, rent versus purchasing and buying our own equipment and having it. Then we can keep it open longer. So there's a lot of different, and I say that only to point out the various options that are out there for each of these four entities, and to be evaluated in terms of what some of that existing money could be used for. So that's just one thing. There's a lot of things that and I'm going to take my TLA hat off and put my DTF hat on for a minute, but there's a lot of things that we haven't been able to really maximize from a plaza perspective with respect to the wintertime use of the plaza. Let's face it, this is Kansas, okay? So we need to think in terms of how we can best market and promote the plaza during those wintertime months. We don't have a lot of trouble in the spring, summer, and fall. So the ice rink was a natural for us to do that. So just want to put that out there, and we'll be available to help from a lodging perspective. If you need expertise on anything, we'll certainly help. I know I participated in that original selection committee 7 years ago. I think it was 7 years ago, so very familiar with the process that we used, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sean?
Thank you, guys. Sean Dixon, president of Visit Topeka. Lovely to see you all. Freddie, congrats again. Great hire, city, by the way. Freddie's an amazing guy. You got to go in from us. In a general sense, I'll just say something to consider is TGT monies open up. If not brick and mortar, and obviously the appetite for operational funding aside, the analogy I like to use is we've built some really cool toys in this community, but we don't have batteries a lot of the time. So I'll point to Dino Days, which was happening a year ago last year. We had the Overland Station, we had these great facilities that needed the content, and we stepped up. But Sue the T-Rex alone was a $180,000 rental after the inbound shipping and all that was processed, plus the other exhibits that we contributed to and the Lodging Association contributed to out of their T-bid. None of that was capital infrastructure spending, but it made a huge impact to the tune of 50,000 net attendees at our attractions during that time over 2019. So as we kind of get to the point where we feel like there may be a critical mass here in terms of the assets available, in terms of buildings and brick and mortar, putting content in them is a real struggle for people too to raise that money. Currently, if Visit Topeka makes a decision to invest in a concert or programming or an event, that's money that can't be used to promote the community outside the community. So it comes at the cost of our marketing campaign. And you guys have a report in our Q4 packet that is our third-party marketing and effectiveness research that will show you that we are very good at what we do when we spend this money, and that we are one of the few destinations that firm has ever measured that is not anywhere close to the impact they can make with the dollars that we could have. We're so efficient, they think we could keep going in terms of growing that spend. But those are the decisions we make. We try to strike that balance right now because the market needs it. Frankly, Topeka still doesn't know it's a destination. They don't know people want to come here and visit until we actually put something in front of them and they get really excited. So I'll just throw that out for consideration. Also know that we are incredibly busy right now. As bad as the pandemic was, we are seeing numbers for the first time that aren't just in terms of great TGT revenue, which can be artificial, because just because we've had high numbers recently doesn't mean we've had higher numbers of rooms sold. Just means we're selling them at higher rates because of inflation. It wasn't until January of this year where we finally saw not only better than pre-pandemic numbers in terms of the number of rooms sold, but back to 2008. So this market is very, very hot right now. My team is all out at Washburn right now, hosting the National Junior College Indoor Track and Field Championships, which we incentivize to bring here and then help run that tournament. But this is our third weekend in a row of a regional or national sporting event, and then we'll have Kansas Kids Wrestling next week. So the numbers are going to continue to look really good, and hopefully we can keep that going with great programming as well. So. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
If we give you this 187, we can get the dinos back?
We would work to bring something back.
No, that's not the question. That's not the,
So,
people really like that.
yes.
And now I'm seeing it in Manhattan, I believe.
Yeah. So I personally, I don't necessarily like sequels back to back. But we've got other things in this community that people will remember were part of the tourism marketplace at one point in time that are part of the DNA. I would love to see a train festival return to this community, or additional exhibits as it relates to civil rights, which the Brown v. Board is coming up in a year, and we're working on helping to plan that. There's all kinds of great things that I think we can work with every entity who considers them as a tourism entity to be a part of something, some sort of citywide celebration. But again, for Dino Days to work, we needed $500,000 worth of programming across us and the zoo and other entities, and then another several $100,000 just to market it. But I would love to put something that big together again. It's just sort of, we're letting the market do what it needs to do right now, but it takes that level of
Okay,
infrastructure.
we'll keep our money.
Yep, and just so you know how we were able to do that, we get a portion of the TGT that is an encumbered bid fund. Because the pandemic hit and shut down all the groups that we were incentivizing, we had money allocated to do that because of that. So it was sort of a fluke that was able to happen, but I think it's something that we could intentionally do if we so choose with some of these allocations. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Let me tell you what
Councilwoman Ortiz, would you like an update from the Jayhawk Theater? I'm online.
yeah, hold on. We're not done with Sean yet.
Okay, sorry.
Here's what I want. All right, no, but this is, I'm gonna throw it out there in public. Maybe it'll happen one day, right? If you think it long enough, it happens. I've always thought in the digital age, this should be easier to do at this point. I mean, we do have various areas of historical markers across the city. So whether it's our African American heritage, our Hispanic heritage, our train history, and if you walk around to go to various parts of Topeka, you know, you can say this is where this occurred, this is where this occurred. I would like to see the city at some point develop marking posts at those areas connected to an audio tour that people can put in, which is pretty simple on an app or something, and go, when they go to those markers, be able to say, I'm taking the Hispanic Heritage Tour across Topeka. Tells me to go here, I see the marker, I hit the play, I listen to the history here, I move on to the next one. Yep. And that's something I think anytime people come to Topeka then for free could access. And at that point, you're just picking how you put those together. And
yes. Heritage tourism is important to a community like ours where there's such a rich history. I can tell you Councilwoman Hiller in particular is very passionate about that. Luckily, right now, the city is in the process of inventorying at least African American historic sites through a grant process. We're eagerly watching the outcome of that because that will serve as the basis for possibly creating that list of those items. Sure. And then that process can be duplicated for other instances in other sort of parts of our community. But that is on our list. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean.
Yep.
All right, Joanne, Jayhawk Theater.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you. And I am sorry that I'm not there in person. I have pulled my back and I am not moving very well. But I wanted to start by thanking you all for the opportunity to update you. And as you know, the TGT funds have been really critical in keeping the Jayhawk moving forward. We have worked really hard to reinvest those dollars and continue to drive economic impact. And just, you know, Sean's amazing. We just met with him yesterday, and there's so many great things in the works, and appreciate what you guys do for our community and understanding the importance of this. So one thing we heard recently was that weren't hearing too much about the Jayhawk Theater. Since then, there was an article in the paper talking about the need for increased occupancy, and we're working really hard on that. The HVAC system, just as an example, that was designed as kind of a temporary Band-Aid to stabilize the conditions of the theater so that they did not further deteriorate. It was not set up to host big events and hundreds of people in the auditorium. So in our coldest months and in our hottest months, one of the things that we take really seriously is as we're drawing new people into the community, and we're seeing incredible statistics on that, we want them to have a good experience. So just one recent example, last year we were able to hold Princess Bride in the auditorium, and that was 200 tickets. That was a $4,600 event. This year it was too cold. We moved it to the gallery. That's 72. We sold out a week and a half early. People were upset because we had already sold out. And we drew people from all over. 88% of those tickets were new people. And when we bring new people into the community, we want them to have an amazing time. They love Topeka. They want to come back and do other things. So then that was a $1,600 event. So that's a difference of $3,000, which is a lot of money to us. But more than that, if you look at what if we had increased occupancy and what we're working hard to do, say it's only 500 tickets, that then becomes a $10,000 event. But more than that, it's 500 people coming downtown, eating dinner, going out to bars and restaurants, paying babysitters, paying for gas, spending the night. So we're tracking all of those zip codes and statistics, and just appreciate your support that has kept things moving forward. We're excited about the foundation restoration. As Jeff had indicated in the update, we have information on that. It's going to cost a lot more than we had hoped, and it's a very risky project. So we're coordinating with the city's top engineers on that, and we will keep you updated. But the reality is that it really needs to be a part of a larger project, because there is so much risk involved to help absorb that risk. Because we want the money going towards the work and the restoration and sealing the envelope so it doesn't leak water in our basement every time it rains, rather than going to an insurance policy to cover the risk. So we're looking at a lot of things, we're managing a lot of things, and again, really appreciate your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions. That's my quick update.
Questions? All right, thank you, Joanne.
Thank you.
All right, I will point out, as Sean referenced, we do have the Marketing and Media Effectiveness Research report in your packet, so take a look at that from Visit Topeka. Anything else from you two?
Do either of the others want to speak that are online?
No, they're just staff. Yeah, those are the only projects. Anything staff wants to add at this time? You don't have to. I just want to give you the opportunity before we close this meeting.
Nope. Thank you, sir.
All right. Good?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We will get another meeting scheduled sometime in April, and we'll see you all then. This meeting's adjourned.